Now, the most exciting Cromwell discovery in a generation has been made in a Cambridge library. Thomas Cromwell's Book of Hours, a personal prayer book depicted in a famous painting by Holbein, has been unearthed. Dr. Owen Emmerson was one of the team who made the discovery of the Guide to Daily Worship, owned by Henry VIII's powerful advisor, and he joins me now. Good afternoon.
Hello there.
Well, explain this find, because it was sort of hiding in plain sight, wasn't it?
Yes, it really was. And I should say this was part of a much larger project that my wonderful colleague, Kate McCaffrey, has been undertaking. She's been studying a particular printing of books of hours, which were created in 1527. And two rather important people at the Tudor court were in possession of these books. One was Catherine of Aragon, the Queen who is on the wane, and one was Anne Boleyn, the Queen to be, as it were. And so we went as a team to see another copy of that same printing in the Wren Library. And it was actually Alison Palmer, our wonderful curator at Hever, who the very next day saw a portrait of Thomas Cromwell and thought, my goodness, that is the book that we have just seen in the library. It has a remarkable similarity in terms of its binding. So that's where the journey began.
But why had no one discovered it before? Because it was actually in the library.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think the key to it is that it's a printed book of hours. And actually, there's perhaps a little bit of snobbery about it because manuscripts, handwritten books of hours are far more treasured, shall we say, and therefore the genius of what Kate is doing is really shining a spotlight onto these overlooked books. And yeah, ever since then, it is, yeah.
But the fact that it was printed, I have no idea whether this is true, so tell me, does that make it sort of more prestigious, actually? Would it have been, a luxury to have it printed and therefore it was very special to Thomas Cromwell or not?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we look at sort of a handwritten product as being more special now, but in the 1527s, this was sort of the Rolls Royce of books. It was much more legible, much more prestigious. And this wasn't a cheap book by any means. It was printed on vellum. It was hand illuminated. So the fact that these were owned by three incredibly important people at this time is of no coincidence. They were treasures.
Well, and I love sort of thinking back to, and obviously you see it in Pride of Place in Hans Holbein's famous portrait of Cromwell. But what does this find actually tell us about, how Thomas Cromwell, how even Henry VIII and his wives lived?
It tells us that they were very opulent and living a very lavish lifestyle. This binding was created by the goldsmith to King Francis I of France, Pierre Mongeau. It was actually placed on there in circa 1529 to 1530. This was beautiful silver gilt work. It's set with garnets. These are really beautiful jewels. So it tells us that really hard work, which Thomas Cromwell was undoubtedly doing, really came with very large prizes indeed. But it also tells us something about these individuals' piety. It might be of a surprise to your listeners that Anne Boleyn and Thomas Cromwell owned a traditionally Catholic text. But actually, to be a reformer, which these remarkable individuals were, they had to have a really intimate understanding of the faith they wanted to reform. So, of course, they are going to be in possession of these outwardly traditional texts. So it also gives us a window, I think, into this really very important period when Henry's just about to break with the church in Rome and put a crown on Anne's head.
I feel we've only just scratched the surface. There's so much more to find out, and it is incredible, this discovery that you've made. Thank you so much for bringing us all of that. Dr. Owen Emmerson, who is one of the team who made the discovery of this personal prayer book owned by Thomas Cromwell.